Hi, my name's Penny. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do a Top 5 Wednesday video for you. So Top 5 Wednesday is a group with weekly prompts, and today's prompt is Top 5 Gender Bending Books. So I really struggled with this prompt because even though I tend to keep to fantasy and science fiction type books, I also don't really think about genre when I'm reading books, or when I'm selecting books I tend to just think about ones that perhaps have something interesting that's beyond what I might experience in real life, which is why I tend to go for fantasy and science fiction, because they've got elements that don't happen in real life. But at the same time, it's really common for fantasy and science fiction books to have elements of each other or elements of other genres. So I was stuck between, do I keep genre bending? So I was stuck between, do I keep genre bending as like quite a precise thing where the genres have to be completely different and surprising and a completely new way of doing things, in which case I'm probably not going to be able to think of anything. Or do I let it just be science fiction and fantasy, in which case it's pretty much every book on my bookshelf. And then I just gave up on coming up with what I thought it was, and I took the lead from someone else in the Goodreads group and went on Goodreads, found a list of genre bending books and went through those and picked out kind of the 5 that I thought were probably the most interesting. Okay, so that was a long introduction, but let's get into the books. Number 5 is the Dragon Riders of Pern series by Anne McCaffrey. So there are a lot of books in this series. I think this is the next book I'm supposed to be reading in the series. Basically, you've got dragons. That's the best summary. This planet that has kind of this thread often falls. Thread being like, I don't know, acidy stuff is maybe the simplest way to describe it. Burns things. It falls from the sky, but because they've got the dragons can shoot flame out of their mouths, burn the thread while it's still in the air. The thread comes from the moon. It's kind of crazy, but the dragons can burn the thread and hence keep the population safe. So it starts out as a kind of a pure fantasy, but more and more as you go along it becomes clear that it's more of a science fiction. It's quite an old series. Anne McCaffrey was writing it, and now her son Todd McCaffrey has taken it over. Can sometimes be a little bit sexist, which is a little bit annoying, but in general the series is still really enjoyable, so I need to keep progressing with it. This is on my list of series that I need to complete, even though I don't think that it is finished yet since Todd McCaffrey's taken it over. Then number 4 is a book that I read recently, which is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So this is a sort of science fiction thriller. So this guy, I've forgotten his name now, Jason, he gets kidnapped, and when he wakes up his life is completely different for science fiction type reasons, but it also kind of becomes quite thrillerish as he tries to get his life back and events get more and more extreme. I really enjoyed that mix of thriller and science fiction, and I think Dark Matter is actually on my list for favourite books of the year. The number 3 is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. I can't really say that, Niffenegger. This book is kind of, for the most part, it's a bit of a contemporary. It's about a man and he can travel through time, but not intentionally, and his wife and their relationship. Obviously him constantly traveling through time does put some twists on the relationship, but the time travel, even though it has a massive impact on the book, it's not really, like, it's not a pure science fiction because the focus is on the relationships, not the science fiction. Now personally, I really love time travel books, especially when they're done well, and I thought this was one that was done particularly well. And I also enjoyed kind of the relationship aspects of the book. The number 2 would be The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin. So this book, I probably need to give it another read because I don't remember exactly what it's about, but there's a guy from Earth who's gone to another planet. I think we're kind of sending out ambassadors to all these different planets, but they're still able to communicate back to Earth through some kind of computer. But the world that he's gone to doesn't have that kind of technology, so they kind of think of him is a magician type thing. But also, the people in this world don't really have gender the same as ours, so people can be man or woman. The Earth character, whose kind of perspective you're seeing things through, he tends to think of most characters as men just kind of by default, but kind of this main alien that he's building a relationship with and kind of getting wrapped in with the whole politics of the world through, he kind of ends up changing his gender throughout the story, and the main character realizes that his relationship, kind of thinks he has like this buddy-buddy men relationship, and he realizes that maybe their relationship is different from what he thought. Now, this particular edition had an introduction from Ursula Le Guin, and she talks about how science fiction is often a thought experiment. You're kind of like, if this particular thing was true, then what might the world look like? And I really enjoyed that description of science fiction. But the story also has kind of quite fantastical elements about it because of the world that she's put the main characters into. So then the number one genre bending book that I've read, I would say, would be Wicked by Gregory Maguire. So Wicked is a retelling of the Wizard of Oz story, but it's told from the Wicked Witch of the West East. Whichever one doesn't get a house put on her. It's told from her perspective right from when she's a child and kind of like how she got into the situation, but also that Dorothy's perspective of what was happening is possibly not accurate at all. So while it's kind of retelling this classic fantasy story, it's also totally flipping it on its head, but also it's kind of more in a steampunk world, which I guess in some ways Wizard of Oz is. I don't know if you've seen Return to Oz, which was the sequel movie to Wizard of Oz. If you haven't, I would totally recommend it. I watched it as a child and it was terrifying. I don't know, like the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow are disgusting and a complete fail, but there's TikTok who's like this robot, he's amazing. So that's kind of a steampunk, and I need to read actually the original Wizard of Oz. It's actually a whole series, and I've been meaning, it's on my list somewhere, to read that whole series, not just the Wizard of Oz book, but the whole series. And I think that there is more of these kind of like mechanical clockwork creatures, so Gregory Maguire's like worked that in as well. But the whole Wicked series was really amazing, and even though it's been quite a while since I read that series, it kind of sticks with me about how easy it is for someone to be misunderstood, and you can be trying to do your best, but life kind of happens and maybe you don't always do the right thing, but you're trying, but people can still really misunderstand you. That part of the story really sticks with me. So I'd love to know what other great genre bending books are out there. Obviously I'll be watching a whole bunch of other top 5 Wednesday videos and reading the blogs, so I'll get lots of suggestions from there. But if you have any other suggestions, comment down below or link your video if you've made one. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.